Hey Sugar Snaps, welcome to the Textile and YouTube channel. Today I am wet felting a project bag. Let's get started. I want to include a hand spun yarn, some sort of art yarn that I can twine around the ball as I do my felting process. So I'm gonna pick some colors for that. Some of my wool here in the closet. Mom found this turquoise at a thrift store and I have quite a bit of it. I also have, I just got from the Woolery a bag of their Rosie's Wool Cloud Top. It's a US grown wool. It's kind of a mixed fiber. What else do I have in here? I've got Coriadale Superwash. Definitely not gonna use Superwash. Coriadale top in natural white. That is a good option. So I think I'll go with the turquoise. This will be the base of the bag. So I've tried shopping my yarn wall collection and seeing if there's any wool yarns that I can use that I already have spun. This I made on my Ashford traditional jumbo flyer, and I shared the process in a video. And this would be really fun. It's really light and fluffy, and this is was a core spun yarn, so there is a stiff core inside of spun yarn, and then the outside's really light and fluffy, so it'd probably catch really well in the felting. Another one that I came across was this little guy. The next one that I have is another art yarn that I spun up with these nubbins of dyed fibers. Is pretty special and I want to use it for a special project. Probably not this one. Not that this isn't a special project, but you know, there's yarns that you set aside, and maybe this will always just be art yarn to hang on my art wall, or yarn wall. Now it's an art wall. My kitchen sink yarn, this is yarn that I spun from just a ton of little bits and pieces of scrap that I had. I think I'm back to the drawing board. I am struggling with motivation to get started on this project and creativity. Been staring at my yarn pegboards, looking at all my hand spun yarns, trying to decide which ones I might use. And I've narrowed it down to wanting to spin something new, which means that now I'm transitioning to looking through my wool fibers and thinking through, do I need to dye something today? What are the steps there? I was just thinking, Bailey and I have been posting on Instagram some creative encouragement and tips on motivation, and I think it's time I head over there and take some of my own advice, because I definitely need a little nudge this morning to get this project going. So I've got this color here, and I have some of these navies that I'm going to incorporate. I think I need to find something over here to contrast, to pull out the variety. Or if I change this and I go to this triangle, I could go for yellow or fuchsia. Here's some fuchsia I could play around with. Oh, here's some bright yellow. That kind of works, but I think this would go better with these. Take this out, and then I'm gonna go look in my small batch stash. This bag of little pieces, and then my scrap bag. So if I'm thinking of the color wheel, looking for fuchsia-like colors, so something in this vein, definitely have the high contrast and push it more towards pops of color. Some of these like minty colors. So this is my base. If I use these little colors and then the mint greens there as accents, I could pull this in because it kind of goes with the fuchsia. Pull that in as well. Greens, navies, and purples here. Now I have my color direction. I am going to use the accent colors as a yarn. I think this darker color will be the base or the core of a core spun yarn, and then I'll use all the rest of these accent colors here, kind of pop the colors out so that they show up a little bit more. I'm going to set up my Kromsky Sonata wheel for this project. I haven't used her in a while, so I thought I'd pull her out. I'm going for something pretty bulky.
Close our eyes, the current sweeps right over us. Feel the world spin round again for only us. Hold your breath, we're diving into something bigger than anything we've ever been. Love be lighthouse, oh, to lead you home. Stars and the moon illuminating every road.
Well, I made some fun bobble yarn, a few different strands here. I would not suggest using the technique that I use because it's very sloppy and unconventional, and I kind of broke all the rules. But I got color into the strand, and it's actually pretty fun yarn. It's gonna look really cool, I think, when it's wet felted, because these blobs of color will just puff down, and now I've already got a knot, and turn into highlights of or pops of color for my bag project. This is a 12-inch beach ball. As I'm working, I can let out some of the air to kind of tighten up the felt a bit. What's on the outside will be the inside of the bag. So I'm going to start by applying what I want to show on the outside of the bag, so probably my strands of novelty yarn. I think my first step is going to be wrapping this around. I want the hole at the top so I can release air as I go. And then I'm going to wrap this. This is a technique that I've seen Natasha Smart do in her books, as well as in her videos and other content. If you are diving into wet felting, check out Natasha Smart's content. I'll link some videos below as well. The colors here are reminding me of roses climbing up a rose trellis. I think because the green of the base yarn with the pops of color, and then the blue ball in the background kind of looks like the sky poking through. But this yarn turned out looking really cool on here, so I'm excited to see how it turns out as we wet felt. I have just run into a major difficulty, which is, I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but this wool, because it was from the thrift store, wasn't labeled. And I know it's merino, just based on texture, but what I didn't think about is if it was superwash or not. And as I'm trying to get set up for wet felting, I'm pretty sure it is, which means it's treated in a way that keeps it from felting. And since I want it to felt, this isn't going to work. So going back to the drawing board as far as the base color goes, all of that color theory work feels like it went to waste. So I need to pick out an alternate base color that still will make these colors pop, because I really do like how this yarn turned out and want that to stay put. But this, okay, alternate color plans. I'm going to do the background in this yellow. I think that will correspond with the colors of my yarn well, and then do another layer with the rest of the dark navy and teal color that will be inside as the main structure of the bag. But I want the yellow to pop on the outside. So this will be my first layer to apply. Can't believe I did that. I got so excited to start that I didn't even really think about the fact that, is the fiber what I actually need it to be? Okay, I think I'm back on track, working on applying the yellow. I'm going to prep a bunch of fluffy pieces using my carders here, because then I don't have to keep drying my hands off as I apply them. I'm applying everything wet so that it sticks and I can rotate around the ball form. This would be so much easier with a bat, but I don't have a bat. I have roving. The technique that's been working best for me here is coming across and setting the roving on top and then pulling strands out so that I end up with wispy ends here along the edge, and then I can pull this off and it makes a little fluffy sheet that I can then apply to my piece. So I've been setting those aside and making a bunch up at a time. The bag turned out really well. I just let it dry overnight once I'd finished doing the felting process, and now it's nice and sturdy. The colors are showing through nicely, and I have some mix of color with the yellow and the navy there. I'm going to add some hardware, turn this into a little bucket bag. Well, I finished it. It's so cute. I gave it a little handle because I thought that this would be better for projects. I can grab it and then I'm not dealing with a really long handle trying to untangle it and all that. I put a little buttonhole and stitched on this button here so it clasps closed. I can use it open like this and just tote it around like this little tulip bag style, or button it closed. I really love how this shape turned out. This kind of happened naturally, but also because I wet felted on the ball, I was able to maintain a nice round structure, and then I just used some tension and pulling to create the lip or opening up here. I think this is going to be a really nice project bag. In fact, switch out my washcloth project here. Tuck it in there. Perfect. Can close this up, and now my project is nice and secure. The felt with the 3 layers that I did on it is really thick because of the way that I carded the wool out and had some pretty thick layers as I laid it down. That hiccup with the superwash wool is pretty embarrassing, but I think even though I went through all the trouble of planning the colors out and then had to toss that whole plan out the window, I really am enjoying how the yellow interacted with the inner color, which was that blue and teal. They kind of mixed on the front, so you can see even in here the yellow gives way to some of the blue, so it reads green from a distance, and then when you look closely you can see the separation of color. But I think that turned out really pretty. The yarn worked in here, worked out well. Definitely has that patches of color. You really have to think about the fact that when you felt something, the air in it totally deflates, so any puffiness in the wool, that gets flattened and smashed out flat. And so the depth of color, I'm glad I did as much of a bunch of wool in places as I did, because these definitely flattened out, and if they had been thinner, they would have just blended in with the yellow and the navy that's poking through or showing through the yellow and just disappeared. So that's something that I am going to remember for the next project, and something to consider when you're wet felting is thickness of color really matters, because if you're layering colors on top of each other, they do blend a bit. And if you have a light color with a dark color underneath, like I have the yellow on top of the blue does show through. Overall, I'm really happy with my little project bag. I think the hardware on here works really well, and the structure is very firm and nice and thick. Again, colors didn't go exactly how I wanted, but I think it turned out better than it would have with the teal, just based on what I have here. I'm really enjoying these color combinations. If I was to do something different, obviously I wouldn't have gone through the trouble of choosing a wool that I couldn't actually use and starting out with something different. One other thing that I might do differently is come in and clean up my cut edge a little bit more before I did the felting of this edge. Just straightened it up. It's a little bit wonky and kind of zigzaggy along that edge, so I could straighten that up and then refelt it. Decided to just go for it for this project, but in the future I would definitely clean that edge up a little bit more before finishing that off with some extra edge felting. Check the description below for Natasha Smart's wet felting curriculum and books and things. She has a lot of great content on wet felting that I've really appreciated. You can also find a link down there to sign up for the Textile Indie email update. I send out a once a week email with news from the Textile Indie channel, website, and social media, and I'd love to have you join the Textile Indie community there. Until next week, happy making, and I'll see you later. Bye.